Hello and welcome. Before we get to league start, I wanted to preempt some questions. I know that I've had a ton of questions. I've been sort of keeping track of them, and I wanted to answer them before we got to league start so that in the middle of league start, you had something that you could reference if you were stuck or couldn't figure something out. So here they are in no particular order. The first is leveling with explosive trap. There was a nerf to explosive trap at low gem levels. So gem level 1 only provides 3 instead of 4 smaller explosions. I haven't seen the gem skill progression yet, but at some point it will grant that extra smaller explosion, and it'll be back up to 7 at gem level 20. So it might feel a little weird early. I'm not exactly sure. However, I will say that once you get to Act 2, you're going to have Fire Trap as your clear skill, and it feels really good to use both of these. And I know for sure that Fire Trap is not going to be nerfed in 321, and I'm expecting this to be reasonably good still. And if you strongly dislike leveling with explosive trap, that's totally fine. I personally like it because I like starting the game with the skill I'm going to use and then progressing through maps all the way. Usually helps me feel good with the skill and get used to the way that it plays. But totally understandable if you don't. You can definitely use the sort of meta Orb of Storms mine setup that is, the common way to level up a Saboteur. That's totally reasonable. The second thing is going to be transitioning from a 5-link to a 6-link. Now, when you are ready to do this transition, you're going to note that mana costs here are 8, and in this flavor of the build with this gear, unreserved mana is 99. Now, if we go in here and socket a trap and mind damage or a concentrated effect, either of these is fine. Let's do trap and mind for the sake of this exercise. You'll see our mana cost goes up to 16, and our mana cost per second goes up to 46. Now, there are a few ways that we can deal with this. One is increasing our mana regen. I personally don't like that way of doing it, but know that if that's what you want to do and you want to find some mana regen, you can go do that. What I would recommend instead is we have several jewels here. These are 2 mod jewels for the most part. I think I have one with strength rolled on it to help me get up to enough strength. These sockets are available for you to use a jewel instead that says 5% reduced mana cost of skills, and 2 of these is going to be enough for you to reduce the mana cost of something way more reasonable. Now, this should be fine in order to play the skill and for it to feel good at these numbers. So unreserved mana being 99 and mana cost being 10. Another thing, and this is probably what I am going to do. I'm probably going to get a few of these jewels. They're pretty easy to roll. It's like 38 alterations, or you can buy them off trade for probably next to nothing, because this is the only mod you care about. If you can get it something nice with crit multi on top of it, or crit multi for fire, or global crit multi, all of those things are fine. Let's say you don't want to do that, and that's fine. The next thing you could do is, instead of a trap and mind damage, you can spend a few extra chaos and get a anomalous trap and mind damage. Now, an anomalous trap and mind damage reads 10% reduced cost of supported skill. So these they come from Heist. They're not readily available in the first few hours, but they do pop up on trade after the heisters start going. And if you look at PoE Ninja, you can see historically this gem cost 20 to 30 C on day 1. So maybe instead of getting, spending 5, 6, 7, 8 C on like a full complement of jewels, like say 4 jewels that have reduced mana cost, you could just buy one of these, and that's going to be totally fine. And you're going to want this when you transition into a higher tier of gear, because the mana costs start to creep up again. And you'll want those jewels for other things like cluster jewels and enduring composure or trap and mind damage or whatever. The other option is a divergent inspiration. Now, this is the most expensive option. These are usually 100 plus C early and around a divine. A lot of builds use them for various things. You can use it for Forbidden Rite, or whatever, but at some point in your build, you're going to want this. This is of the 12 divine budget that I've allocated for the the self-chill transition. Divergent Inspiration is 1 divine of that budget. So you're going to want this eventually. If you want to go ahead and buy it in order to transition to 6 link, that's fine if you have enough currency to do it. But probably what I would do is save that for last, because it's not going to provide you a DPS boost, and either get a trap and mine damage or a couple of those jewels. Now there is another option. If you have enough mana headroom, you can remove this mana mastery reservation efficiency of skills and instead allocate a 10% reduced mana cost of skills here. That will remove reduce your unreserved mana and further reduce your mana cost. However, you're going to have to deal with losing some of your mana pool. So you can deal with that by increasing your mana reservation efficiency by like maybe rolling an implicit here instead of just hitting this with a single essence. There are lots of ways to deal with this. I'm just trying to give you some ideas. Yeah. Okay. Next, and I've seen this question a lot, is how do I cast Zealotry? It doesn't make sense. The reason that we are able to cast Zealotry, if you look, it's really expensive because divine blessings are crazy expensive, is we modulate a few things. So one is this is a level 1 divine blessing. As levels go up, the cost goes up for the skill. So we want to start with a level 1, and then you can work your way up once you have better gear. That combined with a reasonable unreserved mana pool, and this is one of the reasons why I would not actually do the mana mastery, because you're going to want enough mana pool available to cast this Zealotry when you need the extra DPS. And the way that we are able to cast this is with a special flask. It's got a benchcraft, reduced mana costs of skills during effect. It's got an enkindling orb enchant on it for increased effect, and a 25% increased effect naturally rolled on it. So you can just alt spam for increased effect. I think it's like 6-ish enkindling orbs to get the increased effect enchant, and then ask a friend to benchcraft the Katarina mod, or maybe you're one of the lucky few that gets this. So when we have this sulfur flask on, mana cost goes down to 59 and our unreserved mana pool is 100. So this becomes pretty easy to cast. I only cast one at a time. Usually I'll just cast Zealotry if I'm bossing, or I'll just cast Haste if I want to rip through a map with Leap Slam really quickly. Okay, next, how to be tanky. So if you're in maps and you're not feeling tanky enough, let me point out a few things to look at in your POB that will help you out. I've got videos of me just standing in T16 maps. They don't usually only have 1 damage mod or no damage mods, but the fact that I can just stand still in it and let them just attack me, I think is evidence enough that you should be reasonably tanky here. You're gonna want a high tier of ES helmet and a higher tier of evasion body armor. And the reason for that is, and I know a lot of people don't love Escape Artist, but it's really strong. So if you look at the amount of ES and evasion it's giving us, so we get 650 ES and 3,300 evasion rating from this. And this is not good gear, right? Like, so that's a healthy chunk of evasion and ES. In fact, if we go and look and we take off the Kintsugi, look at our energy shield pool, 1,450, and let's take it off. That's a massive amount of ES just from having an evasion base in our body armor slot. The next thing you're going to want to look at is the evasion rating itself. So Ghost Dance, if you read the skill, says recover energy shield equal to 3% of your evasion rating. Part of the reason that Kintsugi and some other alternates I'm about to tell you about are really great is they have huge ES bases. So, and Kintsugi gives you 100% increased evasion on top of that. So you'll see when we have been hit recently and we have not been hit recently, you can see our EHP goes up because of the 35% reduction from Kintsugi. But when we lose that, we gain a bunch of evasion. So 3% of this is roughly 1,400. What I'd recommend is making sure that your 3% number of evasion rating is somewhere around this if you can. It can also be Probably anything more than 75% of your ES pool is going to be totally fine. But yeah, if you have really low evasion because you don't have it rolled on a flask, or maybe the rest of your gear, maybe you don't have ES essences on your rings or something like that. Yeah, I would check those things first. One of the questions I've been seeing a lot, or been asked a lot, is what if everything, or the 2 uniques that we need in order to sort of feel strong in maps, are hard to come by? So I want to give you some alternates for that. Any high evasion rating unique is going to be fine. Queen of the Forest is really nice, but on day 1 it's usually a little more expensive. But Cospri's Will, pretty inexpensive. I think it's usually a 1C unique on day 1. It's got a pretty high evasion base, so 792, and then this is a near max roll, decreased evasion rating, and you'll get a pretty similar tankiness. The best one is still Kintsugi, because it provides... Oh, are we going to survive this? Oh, they got me. Nice. Okay, so I guess we're not fully immortal, but anyway, you get the gist. There are alternatives to this that work just fine. If we switch from something like Kintsugi into something that might be a little cheaper, like Cospri's Will, we also get an extra curse, and I would probably use that to use Assassin's Mark. So Assassin's Mark by itself is going to grant us 13% extra DPS. However, we can go over here and grab Mark the Prey, which is going to be another 18 on top of that. So we just gained 1,000,000 DPS with 3 passives and switching from a Kintsugi into a Cospri's Will. Again, like, I'm just trying to give you ideas. There are lots of different ways to do this. This is one. So there's some knobs if you're looking for a Skin of the Lords, and maybe the exact colors that you are after isn't available on trade, or maybe it's crazy expensive, that you can modulate in order to sort of get this to work. Now, there are a few good supports, and they're different colors, so you can sort of mix and match. Right here, I've got a 2-2-2 setup, and that is because if you look on the tree, we need Master Sapper. It grants us frenzy charges, it grants us trap damage, it grants us trap throwing speed, but it also importantly gives us 2 additional traps. Since we're pegging max traps pretty consistently, that's another like 8-ish% damage that you don't actually see here. It's only when all of your max traps are out. However, if you wanted to, you could switch into charge traps, which will also grant us frenzy charges, and instead drop Master Sapper. Now, this will give you some extra passives to play with, like maybe you want some more evasion to get your evasion numbers up so that you can go stance more energy shield. But yeah, sometimes just more passives is helpful, or maybe you're just not quite level 96 or 97 or whatever you need in order to be there. So charge traps is one way to do that. Another is to swap into conk effect. So this would give you a blue link instead of a green or a red. I would probably drop added fire. This setup is this is sort of a more traditional trapper setup, and you can find Skin of the Lords with these. Although you'll probably be competing with other trappers for these, but anyway, this is another way to do it. I'll say this: concentrated effect is a fat DPS boost. It's mega, especially when you look at calcs and you look at the AOE. It boosts your single target considerably, but it makes your clear a little worse and feel a little worse. So probably until I get into a later section of the game when everything is getting one shot, I generally won't run conk effect. Again, everything's variable. It's all play it by feel. If it feels good for you to have conk effect, then you should absolutely be using conk effect. If it feels good for you to not have conk effect and have additional AoE and spread, then you should absolutely have added fire damage instead. There's no perfect answer here. There's nothing right. But anyway, there's some options when you're looking for colors, and they're all fine. Like you can see, the DPS numbers are very good, sort of regardless of the configuration that you have set up here. Just one thing to and I'm going to hammer this home, hopefully, is that if you select charge traps, you can drop Master Sapper, but you will want to make sure that you if you decide not to use charge traps, that you have some source of frenzy generation. Like frenzy charges are very big. You definitely want them. And if you get charge traps, another thing that you might be interested in doing is allocating, frenetic or fervor, like extra. With charge traps, you get additional trap throwing speed, and additional, is it crit multi, right? Oh, crit multi is for power charges. So, but yeah, the trap throwing speed is really nice. Anyway, I've talked a lot about that. There are other notables that you could get too instead of Call to Arms. If you switch from Call to Arms into something else, I would recommend getting an Enduring Composure small cluster. They're really easy to make. You just grab a 2 passive 15% armor small cluster and you hit it with 38 alteration orbs, and that's enough on average to hit Enduring Composure. And it's actually, I think, the best way to get them, because they just automatically show up whenever you're hit. And you don't have to left click through Enduring Cry, but you also lose some of the health regen from Enduring Cry. Divine Shield is one thing I would look at. Divine Shield is fantastic. For every Fizz damage hit you prevent, you get ES regen. And again, like, our primary mitigation is ES. And then also, I would consider taking Wicked Ward. Wicked Ward is going to be, the downside of this is not going to affect us too much. But, it's a really strong, powerful skill, but you probably would want to offset it somehow. Yeah, and then the other, probably fourth one I would consider is going with Glancing Blows. So Glancing Blows, I would take that and then equip a shield in my offhand instead of an offhand scepter. Now you'll lose some damage, obviously, by taking off a scepter, but you can roll a spirit shield with +1 gems. You would just, lose a healthy chunk of damage, but your EHP would go up. You'd start blocking things. It's a trade-off. Some people like being tankier, and there are ways in which you can do that. All right, I feel like I've rambled on a lot. Hopefully I've answered enough questions. I tried to answer all the ones that I saw the most, and I hope you have a really fantastic league start. I won't be around a ton. I'll try to answer questions as best I can. I have some family obligations, so I won't really start playing League for a few days. But anyway, I hope you have an awesome time, and we'll see you in 321 in just a few hours.